Today I'm going to show you how to tan a sheepskin.
Take me out in the garden with the beetles and the frogs. Take me to the back door to see the geckos and moths. Get me down on the ground to see the spiders' fangs. Just get me outside with my boomerang. Get me outside with my boomerang.
When I was a teenager, I got into tanning skins. I tanned sheep skins and rabbit skins, a couple of fox skins and a few cat skins even, and some hares. I even tanned a European carp skin. Tonight I'm going to take you through the process of tanning a sheepskin. So we're going to start with the salting, and in a couple of weeks we'll end up with the finished product of leather. The problem is I haven't been able to find any skins in the shed. All I've got is this empty few boards here on the ground, and I'm not sure what we're going to do about it. Oh, great, look at that. I'll tell you what, it doesn't happen every day, but you sure do appreciate it when it does. We'll make a start on this one right away. Now the first step to tanning a skin is to inspect it. Make sure it's got no nicks or bad nicks that you wouldn't want to have on the skin later when it's finished. And also you've got to get any excess fat off, because that'll prevent the chemicals and the salt from actually tanning the skin. So you might have to use your fleshing knife to get off any excess fat, or just don't worry about doing fatty skins. Just wait till you've got a nice fatless one like this one here. So it's best to put the salt on while they're still fresh, and put a nice thin layer, just so it's spreadable on your hands, and that's enough like that. So just pour it straight out of the packet, straight on the skin like that. Now after you've salted it, you've got to then fold it in half and make sure it's skin to skin contact. You don't want to lose any excess or extra moisture that it has. You don't want it to dry out, and you want that salt to pull the moisture out, and it should be wet in the morning or the next day when you come to do the next layer of salt. So then you just got to fold it in such a way that it keeps that skin-to-skin contact, and then roll it up.
We'd sit and we'd drink apple.
Making sure that all the salt stays on the skin as much as possible. On the edges, it's not going to matter so much because you'll cut those off in the end process. And lastly, you just roll it up like this. Now that can be just kept in a bag or in a spot where it's going to get a bit of air. If you use a bag, it's got to be a bag that's not a plastic bag. I just keep it in the shed. There's an area where it's going to get a bit of air, like this grating here is fine. I'll just put it up against there like that. Now this is the second day, or it's supposed to be. I actually got this footage from another time. But the process is exactly the same. You get out your skin, you unroll it, and then you brush off the salt from the day before, and that should have brought out quite a bit of moisture into the skin. Now you discard that salt, and then you reapply some more salt at the same sort of thickness, and then you roll the skin back up and then leave it for another week.
All the way to town. I'm driving and I'm wondering if she's still around.
Righto, looks pretty good. It's been just over a week since we rolled it up after the second salting. So now we can put the vinegar on. Now the vinegar, we'll just get rid of this extra salt here first though. The vinegar will, it's because it's a weak acid, it'll break down the flesh membrane that is on the skin, because the flesh membrane needs to be scraped off, and the vinegar will weaken that in about 12 to 24 hours, and then we can easily scrape off the flesh. You don't have to put the vinegar on, but it does make the job a bit easier. So I'll spray that on now, and tomorrow we'll come back to take the flesh off.
I've been gone a long time, grinding through these hills I climb. Back to the sweet.
Right, that's wet enough. We'll fold it back up and open it up tomorrow. Right, we've had a full day in the vinegar, and now we've got to put it on the fleshing beam, shake off the excess salt, and then scrape off the flesh membrane.
And I'm wondering if she's still around. I'm gonna lay that hammer down.
Fleshing a skin can be quite a skill to develop. It takes a little bit of time to learn not to nick the skin. You've got to find the right angle and the right pressure, so you don't slice the skin while you're trying to grate off that flesh. So you're best to practice on the edge first till you get the hang of it a bit. Once you've got the feel of that, then you move on to the middle of the skin and do the job properly. Well, the flesh membrane is coming off quite nicely. That's it there. It balls up on the blade of the fleshing knife. And by the way, that's a fleshing knife. I think my grandfather might have made that one actually. I do have another one, but I can't find it. Came with the tanning kit. Anyway, that stuff there, that's actually a bit of fat, some of the salt that didn't get brushed off, and the flesh membrane. The flesh membrane's that fibrous-y sort of stuff there. Yeah, that hampers the tanning process, and it ends up with a look on the skin that kind of goes really dark colour, and it breaks off and you don't want it on there. So I'll go ahead and finish the whole skin now. Sometimes the skin's a little bit drier than you need it to be to flesh it properly, so just apply a bit more vinegar or even some water just to make it work better, and so it doesn't catch so much when you run the blade over the skin. Right, well, what I couldn't get off with the knife, it's broken it up enough to now go into the solution. Except first, we've got to chuck it in the trough and give it a wash. Washing the skin's pretty important because you've got to get a lot of dust and grease and a bit of fat and maybe even a bit of blood off and out of the skin, so the chemical can be really concentrated and do its job properly. Just be careful though to use a normal detergent and not something that's got enzymes in it, because that'll actually affect the skin and it'll interfere with the tanning process. Okay, so after we've washed it, we're then going to stick it in the solution that's actually going to do the tanning. This solution is called Leader Tanning Formula. It's actually part of a kit that I bought called Leader Tanning Kit. It also comes with a lube and also a fleshing knife. Well, today's a day that we're going to stretch the skin, and we're also going to put the lube on, which helps keep the skin soft. It's been a good few days since we've put it in the solution, and the skin's now on that sort of mainly bluey colour, and it's fully penetrated. There's no white spots left on the skin at all. And you don't want to see any white spots because that means the chemical hasn't gone in. So, yeah, we'll just get to it and stretch it out over this rack just here. Right, let's see how we go. I use these little bale fasteners. They're for wool bales. And they turn out to be quite good for putting skins on a bit of mesh to stretch them out. But if you haven't got this sort of a setup, you can just pin them out on a wooden board, flat wooden board with small nails in the edge.
Enough to make every wild-eyed dream you've had come true. She breaks my heart the way she rides, stirs me up down deep inside. No one does me quite like cowgirls do what they want to when it feels right in the middle of the day, in the dark of the night. Fiddle with your feelings in the time.
Now, straight after you've stretched the skin, you've got to put on the lube, and the lube is quite an important part of the process because it's what keeps the skin soft. Once you've done that, then you just got to leave it for a few days and let it soak in. The lube comes with your tanning kit, and it does tell you how much to put per kilogram of skin weight, but I never really follow those directions. I just spread it out by fingers, and it seems to do the right job every time anyway. You're better off to overdo it than underdo it with this lube. There's any excess lube that's on the skin that doesn't dry out properly will come out in the wash. Because we're going to give it a wash once we're done, and anything that hasn't bonded to the leather, it'll actually just come out in the water and won't be a problem. But if you don't put enough, it'll go stiff and your leather will be preserved, but it won't be soft and nice.
No one does me quite like cowgirls do. I said no one does me quite like cowgirls do.
Alright, that's great. Now we're going to leave that for a couple more days, maybe 3, depending on the weather and how much humidity is in the air, and it'll dry out and soak in, and then we'll give it a wash and a trim, and then it'll be finished. Well, I've had more than a week of it being stretched and the lube soaking in. It doesn't really matter if you go over the time, as long as it's got enough time for the lube to soak in and do its job properly. I've finally got around now to being able to cut it off and have some time working on finishing it. So, one problem that I had when I did this skin was that there was a couple of spots, reddish spots came through the skin, and it was actually rust from when I had stretched it out on that frame. The frame actually flaked its paint off, and because of the chemicals in the skin, they actually rusted the steel, and then the steel it came through in the form of its iron and then stained a little bit sort of pinky red. It hadn't turned out to be a huge problem, but as you'll see later on, there are a few red spots on the skin and the wool. You're doing that, so make sure you put it on a frame that's of, say, galv steel, or you put it on a wooden board like the traditional way to do it. Anyway, so I've got to cut this off now and see how it looks.
Some folks say my old mate is gonna come to no good. Well, he's a bit of a roughie, and he doesn't always act like he should.
There's that rust coming through. I'm hoping most of it's going to wash out. So, but even if it doesn't, still alright. It'll just be a bit spotty, that's all. Now, these edges are quite sharp and it's not a natural look at all, so I'm going to go through now and just smooth off the edges by just cutting it with the knife. Now it's good to cut it with a knife because you don't end up trimming the wool or the fur. It ends up with a nice natural finish because the fur and the wool will sort of go over the edge still. If you cut it with scissors, you cut off that wool and fur as well, and then it looks completely trimmed and it doesn't look so natural. So that's the look I like to finish up with. So I'll go ahead and do that now.
Proud of what he's done. And down by the chook house. The King Brown was waiting to strike. Well, mate, you rushed in, and you probably saved my life, mate. We've been through thick and thin. At times you saved my skin. And when I needed a friend, whoa.
All right, well, starting to feel and look a lot more like a finished product. I've actually got one more stage to go, and that is to sand all this off. And that gives it the nice look on the skin that everybody wants. It gets rid of all these little tufty bits here, and makes it feel a lot more soft, even though it's not. I could actually give it a wash as well, and some of that rusty stuff will come out, but you actually have an over supply of lube in there. I can actually feel it's a little bit oily to touch, so you want to get rid of that excess lube, and then it'll be done. So I'll sand it first. It's going to be a lot easier to sand when it's dry as opposed to after it's just been washed. So washing will be the last thing, and then I'll let it dry out and it'll be done.
Years roll by, you're always at my side. When I needed a friend, whoa, you jumped right in.
Well, the skin is finally done. I've turned a sheepskin into leather. Now I'm pretty happy with the final product. It's really nice and soft and pliable, and it also sanded pretty well as well, except a couple of spots around the edges, but I could spend a bit more time there and finish that off later. I've also washed out all that excess lube, well, almost all of it. There's still a little bit of darkness, that dark stuff there, that dark pattern. That's actually excess lube, but that'll come out in the next wash when I give it a wash eventually after being used as a floor rug or something. There's something that I can't fix though, and that is the staining from that mesh that I hung it on. That iron has really clung on to that wool. I couldn't scrub it off at all. I spent a bit of time there and couldn't shift it, but that's okay. I mean, you shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth anyway, because the skin appeared out of thin air, didn't it? Now, it took quite a bit more time to do this when I thought, looking back at the video and editing it. So thanks for hanging on all the way to the end of the video and seeing me finish the final product. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the video and want to see more of them. And I'll catch you next time.